Before I introduce our speakers, I want to take a few moments to introduce the CHSA to you and bring you up to speed with our roadmap of sustainability. And this is the webinar as our first activity. Our association represents manufacturers and distributors of cleaning and hygiene products. Our commitment to standards began in 1997 with the launch of our first accreditation scheme. We've since added more schemes and in 2020 achieved a strategic aim of every member of our association being accredited. Today we have 6 schemes, all of which guarantee what's on the box is what's in the box. The accreditation scheme for manufacturers of paper-based and woven products guarantees the dimensions and count of every product. The scheme for manufacturers of plastic-based products guarantees their fit for purpose as well as the dimensions and count. And the scheme for manufacturers of cotton-based products guarantees weight, absorbency, and where relevant, the cotton content as well as dimensions and count. The scheme for the manufacture of cleaning and hygiene chemicals guarantees product volumes and the information on the label is fully supported by relevant test data. It also guarantees that containers and plastic bottles holding the chemicals are recyclable and clearly marked with the relevant recycling symbol. The scheme for general manufacture guarantees what's on the box is what's in the box. Finally, membership scheme for the distributors means they're committed to buy cleaning and hygiene products from CHSA accredited manufacturers, and that all products not covered by a CHSA accreditation scheme for manufacturers conform to a clear and rigorous commitment within the code of practice. The combination of our accreditation scheme and tough code of practices means CHSA members trade ethically and sustainably, provide quality fit for purpose products and make sure what's on the box is what's in the box. Our standard, your guarantee. Now, we began our journey towards sustainability last year, bringing together a group of experts from within our membership. I'd like to take this opportunity now to thank them for their personal and company support for this initiative. We started by asking members about their current position in relation to ethical environmental sustainability. The answers range from those who had dedicated expert teams focused on driving the organization forward to those who had little expertise and few resources. Recognizing the variation, we developed our roadmap to sustainability with the goal of helping members move in the right direction, wherever the starting position. The roadmap identified 5 pillars to sustainability in our sector. Pillar 1 is the product as is received, used, and disposed of by the end user. We want product to be designed in with three key principles in mind. The first is that more product is produced using less raw materials, saving resources. A good example is the use of concentrates instead of ready-to-use formulations. The second is that waste must be reduced, moving away from the linear economy where resources are wasted at the end of the product's life. The third principle is to increase recycling and recyclability, helping to move towards a circular economy. Pillar 2 is packaging. As well as the manufacturer's packaging, this includes the packaging used by distributors as they repack product for the last few miles to the end user. Here, less is definitely more. Packaging should use minimal resources, be recyclable, and easy for end users to recycle. We also need a fresh approach to transit packaging. Manufacturers and distributors need to work together to minimize the materials required to create a pallet of mixed products which the customers require. Pillar 3 is transportation. It covers the complete supply chain from sourcing of raw materials to delivery to end users. This pillar in particular is complex and requires a whole life cycle approach. With this in mind, we focused on 2 points. First, that the product is designed to optimize the transportation requirement. For example, designing the product and packaging so more can be transported in the same space. Second, we aim to support members to ask the right questions of the supply chain. These include, how do you optimize loads and delivery routes, and what's your strategy towards delivering electric vehicles? Pillar 4 is social value. It includes mental health, well-being, personal development, community involvement, and the overall ethical approach of business, which includes sourcing from ethically environmental sustainable suppliers. This pillar needs to be embodied throughout the business from the shop floor to senior management. Pillar 5 is the corporate environmental impact covering waste, emissions, and water. With waste, and members who have waste partners will get data they need from them to understand and measure their waste. Equipped with this, they'll be able to reduce it. For those who don't have waste partners, we will share ideas proven to reduce waste. When it comes to emissions, the first step is to educate members about scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. Scope 1 covers direct emissions from owned or controlled sources. Scope 2 covers indirect emissions, for example, the generation and purchase of electricity. Scope 3 covers all other indirect emissions. Water usage is the third element of our fifth pillar. Again, the first step is to understand more about the overall water usage. Today's webinar is the first action in our roadmap to delivery. I will introduce our speakers in a moment, but first want to let you know about the next step on the roadmap. We are about to publish our fact sheet explaining the 5 pillars in more detail. This will be followed by a roadmap to sustainability directory. With data collected by the experts within our membership, the directory contains the context you need to find out more and how to get the guidance you need to make progress. We are also in the process of completing the first fact sheet in the packaging tax, which came into force in April this year. If you'd like copies of these, please email Kathy and put your contact details into the chat box. But now back to the webinar. Our intention this morning is to both inspire and provide practical guidance on how to move towards more environmentally ethical, sustainable business practices and policies. So I'd like to introduce our panel of experts. Amy Carter is Sustainability Activation Manager at Kimberly-Clark Professional UK and Ireland. Vicky Morris is Environmental Sustainability Manager at Evans van der Leyen International. Tony Nawar is Vice President Sustainability and Strategy Innovation at Berry BPI. And Renee Rameze is Global Communication Director at Essity Professional Hygiene. After each introducing himself briefly, they will answer your questions. Some questions have been submitted in advance, but if you have any burning questions, please put them in the chat as we've just done before. Amy, would you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So it's a bit difficult to follow Jo there with the great presentation that she's just done, but I'll give it a try. So I'm Amy Carter and I work for Kimberly-Clark Professional in the UK and Ireland, and I lead sustainability initiatives. So most recently, I've been working on our Right Cycle programme. So this is our closed loop programme for hand towels, dispensers and PPE. But I've also really excitingly been involved in renewable energy project for the UK. So we'd recently been involved in a power purchase agreement, and we've now invested in wind turbines, which is really exciting. There's a lot going on at Kimberly-Clark. Obviously, as part of this panel, we're going to talk broadly about sustainability, but particularly we've been working on packaging, updating our packaging. How do we make it easier to recycle? Social impact, which often doesn't get forgotten, but isn't heroed probably as much as it should be. So lots of work going on there. I'm really pleased to be part of the panel discussion. Sustainability is an absolute passion of mine, and it's such a hot topic at the moment, but it also can be completely overwhelming. I think it's great that the CHSA are working with their members to help navigate through, no matter where they are on the journey. Kimberly-Clark's obviously a big organisation, and when we're able to resource this well, smaller organisations, it can be an absolute minefield. In terms of our industry, I think the 5 pillars that they've been selected are very appropriate and actually really relevant. Before I was going to quickly talk about the pillars, I wanted to share something that I've learned very recently, and actually I think Jo covered some of this off. And really, you know, any step you take towards being more sustainable is important. Don't wait for perfection. If you can make a small change now, you know, wherever you can, be it recycling a bit more, making the recycling process easier for your customers, removing layers of packaging. Don't wait for it to be perfect. You know, do it. And actually, in many instances, sustainability can also save you money. So there are real benefits there as well. Very quickly, in terms of pillars, just some quick thoughts from me about things you might want to think about relating to each pillar. So in terms of product, when you're thinking about products, you know, at Kimberly-Clark, when we're designing products, we're thinking about sustainability right at the start. So when you're sourcing products, don't think about sustainability as an afterthought. Think about it right at the start. You know, does it reduce consumption? We were talking about concentrated chemicals. You know, that could save money right there. Is it designed for better palletization, therefore less trucks on the road? And the ingredients sustainable? You know, all of those things are really important. In terms of packaging, how much recycled content is there? How easy can the packaging be disposed of? Can it be curbside? Think, you know, how can we make the waste stream simpler? Transportation, as mentioned, you know, it needs to be designed for better palletization, optimize delivery, and seek to fill trucks. What's your strategy around a renewable fleet? You know, we know we've got to get to electric vehicles by 2030. How are you going to get there? Social value, what are you doing in the community? You're probably doing lots already. Joe mentioned we don't always talk about the great things that we're doing. Are you volunteering? Do you sponsor a local football team? You know, have fun. It can be real fun being involved in the social enterprise. You know, empower your people to want to do more, and seek partners who share your ethos, who are doing the right thing, and people that are transparent in their activities. Push them, absolutely push them. I would expect people to come to me at Kimberly-Clark and say, what are you doing? We need that. And then finally, environmental impact. I mentioned earlier some of the projects I'm working on. Ask your partners, ask your suppliers, ask your customers, what are you doing? And really, you know, push them to move faster and quicker. And think about, how will this benefit you? What does this mean? You know, will this mean a reduction in your scope 3 emissions? Make sure you're selecting the sustainable products, because the more sustainable products people buy, the more this drives demand, the more manufacturers make the sustainable products. Are you recycling as much as you could? Is there more you could do at your facility? How could you do more? We really need each other as manufacturers, you know, and as partners. We need to push each other to do more. We need to work together to understand what's important, what matters. How do we move forward all the time? Sorry, that may have been longer than 5 minutes, but it's something I'm really passionate about.
Great, no, that's great, Amy. Yeah, lovely. Vicky, over to you if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Vicky Morris. I'm the Environment and Sustainability Manager for Evans Van Dyne. We are doing sustainability on a lot smaller of a scale than a lot of the other speakers on the panel today. We are a small an SME based in Preston, and yeah, so sustainability is not something I ever saw myself doing when I started out in this job. I started out as a quality control technician, and I have just moved through and found this little passion for environment and sustainability as I've gone through the company. And now this is my reason for being in this company. This is what keeps me coming to work every day, looking for better changes where we can make improvements within our processes, be that, you know, improving how we utilize the water in the factory, improving how we package our materials, looking at what is the difference between concentrating our products and selling RTU products. And it turns out the difference is 55 pallets that we're saving from going out into the road. And at the moment, I have a lot of passion for the social aspects, the social aspects of sustainability. I'm learning constantly what a difference, even on a small scale, us sponsoring the local football team means that they can play for another season. So doing little bits within the community as well has a massive impact on our communities. With our environmental impact, we are ISO 14000 accredited and have been since 2007. But I'm also looking constantly at improving our waste. Is there another recycling stream that we could possibly input? Is there a better way to dispose of some sort of packaging that comes in from our suppliers? is there a way that we can liaise with our suppliers and say, is this a bit overpackaged? Is there something that you can reduce when you are sending this to us? And covering, like I said, our water, where can we use it better? Do we need to use that much water to wash out our tanks? And looking at the best way to further our journey. So it's a journey that we're on, and we are nowhere near the end of it. I think very, very few people are, but it is a constant changing narrative that we are on.
Great. Thanks very much, Vicky, for introducing. Tony, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Loken and Kathy, for inviting me. So I think I joined the team today from the angle of being a plastic packaging producer. So that's the angle we approach this. And so we're a part of Berry Global. My responsibility, I'm a colleague of Lorcan. My responsibility spans our whole flexible division in the UK and Europe. So we're mostly focused on flexible packaging. I think as a global organization, we were thinking, being a plastic producer, we want to quickly move to become part of the solution, then the perception that we're part of the problem historically, at least as a producer. So in that journey, we basically signed up to global ambition, and I'll mention a couple. One is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and two, there is the Global Alliance to End Plastic Waste in the UK, the UK Plastic Pact, and so on. So I think there's been a lot of conversation this morning in terms of, trust, compliance. And so if a global organization that is in the plastics world sign up to these ambition as a signatory, means you have to report your results, to have, basically it's making us accountable for making the reduction in CO2 and the carbon footprint towards net zero by 2050. So I think, comment to what Amy mentioned and some others, we look at it from a people, performance, and product perspective. So people first, I'm not going to talk a lot about that. People means our internal stakeholders, our communities, and so on. In terms of performance, it's also, like Vicky mentioned and some others, how we run our operations. We basically are having goals for every one of our manufacturing facility to try to send zero waste to landfill and get accredited for this. Just one example. Doing reduction in energy year over year and having the KPIs to do that. But also some bigger stretch goals around the use of renewable energy. We have a facility in Scotland, so we're uniquely positioned to do some interesting things over there. Now, the angle I could bring to the table today is mostly on the product, and I've heard you discuss a few things of this around plastics. One, you don't need it, don't use it. So, and then where you can reuse it, it's mostly in the rigid packaging world. You ought to look at that. In the flexible industrial packaging, it can be a little bit more complicated. And then where we're spending most of our efforts in terms of product development and innovation with sustainability is make sure we design for 100% recyclability. And at the same time, and that's the season over here in the UK, the last several months, we've been trying to prepare ourselves and our customers, including the big brands, to put 30% genuine recycled content into flexible packaging. And it's a big endeavor from not only from technical feasibility, but also in terms of supply base. And what we quickly find out in the industry across the value chain, that there's still an issue in collection, availability, sorting, and so on. So we're dealing, the flavor I want to give to the team, we as a responsible producer of packaging are trying to look holistically in how we approach this as partners. And any question I can take today on any angle that links to packaging, it would be my pleasure. Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks, Tony. Great. Renee, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, no worries. And if I could ask Kathy to maybe share some of the slides. I'm a slide person. I'm very visually oriented, so I'm sorry for that, but I'll make it painless, I hope.
No worries.
Yeah. My name is Renee. I've been in the professional hygiene business for 20 plus years. And my origin is really also in the sales. So I've been working a lot with customers, and I think that's also what's driving my passion when I work on sustainability. It is, sustainability should create value. And to do that, it always starts with having, a product that does what it should do, either the quality or the efficiency. And then you need to start working on the sustainability on top of it. So looking at the 5 themes, I'm really a lot working with our journey to net zero by 2050, and also a lot about waste reduction. Are you seeing the slides? Kathy, are you able to share?
I don't have access to your slides.
Okay, okay, you disabled me from sharing my slides. Could you enable me maybe?
I can enable you. No.
It's always technical with these kind of. Yeah, okay, let's see if it works.
Yeah, it works.
Super. Okay, again, I'll try to keep it really short. So looking at the 5 topics, I think what I always try to do is to give a little bit of guidance in this field of terminology, and you should go from, being zero emissions and waste, just to give some guidance. And when it comes to product, our mantra is really about the life cycle thinking. So like some others already said, don't just look at one part of a product. Look at the whole circular thinking, which means, it starts with the ingredients, and then you look at the production. Is the manufacturer, do they have any production specific items? And what does the product do? Does it help reduce consumption or use less water? And then also this after use. So it's a kind of like 4 tick boxes. If you look for sustainable solutions, or if you want to develop your own, see if you can tick 4, that would be the best. But as agreed, let's start by ticking one of them. I think the more you can tick, the more you can really make it a true circular approach. Then again, with the plastics, a lot is happening. And again, sometimes plastic is needed. And plastic can be a good thing if you really have a good recycling scheme in place. So for us, 90% of our packaging is already renewable, aka carton or paper, and already 70% of our products have this 30% PCR, so this post-consumer recycled waste. So there's a lot of things you can do here, and as said already with the industry partners, I think our main challenge is to actually get enough recycled plastic to use it. So there's a lot to be done as well from governments, legislations. And earlier we talked about driving all these empty trucks. And for me, you as an industry can really make a difference when it comes to recycling. Why don't you use these empty trucks to bring back plastics or waste that maybe your customers are not sorting or not bringing to the right directions? That's already a big step to take. Then transportations, many things to do. I think actually the most simple one is looking at the order pattern of your customers. Do they really need to get an order every day? Or can they maybe have full pallets? That's actually the simplest thing to make a big difference. But also creative things like compressing your packages, concentrated products. So there's a lot of different topics you can put under this. So again, maybe for yourself, create a few tick boxes and see which ones fit for you. And of course, social values. For us, we call it well-being. I think in our industry, without people, there is no industry. And I heard it already, some people say they get really engaged when working with sustainability. And we shouldn't underestimate the purpose it actually gives people to work for a sustainable company or be involved in sustainability initiatives. So even if you don't have any sustainability person, I bet you would have a lot of people that were willing to be in a work group or willing to do some brainstorming, because it really makes them happy to work with you. And it has already a proven benefit also for retention. So you can think of what does the product do, how is the personal development, and how can you do community or NGO work or the football team. And then, of course, it's the big question of our time. It's going to this net zero emissions by 2050. So look at this also with the companies you work for, because if people have an ambition, they will work towards it. And we're working more and more with this, and also then with our products to really show how they can reduce the carbon impact. But again, look at the reporting. Do people have a sustainability report? Are they following up on targets? If you have any doubts about greenwashing, look at the 7 sins of greenwashing. Look it up on Google and you will find a good checklist for that. And then the last one is already mentioned a lot, and it's also in the CHSA directory, look for these certifications or recognitions that will really also already give you an external view. And now I stop sharing and stop talking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renee.
Okay, we'll kick off with the questions now, if that's okay. I've got, if anyone wants to, we've got a collection of questions that have been submitted in advance, so that's great. If anyone's got any questions that are being triggered in terms of what you've listened to so far, just pop them on the chat and we'll do our best to feed them in as well. But we'll start with a straightforward one, and this will, each of you will just go through each of the panel in turn, and if it's appropriate you can answer, if not we'll move on to the next one. But starting with you, Amy, on this one, can you offer some advice on researching and identifying sustainable suppliers or manufacturers?
So I think everyone's probably mentioned this, but seek third-party recognition. So there are many ways you can look at sustainable suppliers. You could look at EcoVadis, so look at their EcoVadis rating. You could look at SEDEX for procurement purposes. Do they have ISO? So Vicky mentioned ISO 14000, FSC, Ecolabel. Look at their sustainability report. But I really would say third-party certification is something that you'd want to look at to endorse, yeah, whether they're sustainable or not.
Thank you. Vicky, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I do. I think third-party accreditations are really important to look at, but also look at what they are putting out there. What stories are these companies telling? Because you can't always accredit what is behind some of these initiatives. So, you know, what sort of social aspects are they doing, especially with smaller companies? They don't always have the teams in place to put through for the larger accreditations, and some of them aren't necessarily viable for other companies. But if you're looking towards what is this company doing, you know, what are they doing to make steps in the right direction? Are they reducing their packaging, including recycled content? And just be aware of what's being put out onto not only their websites, but also the social media channels as well.
Okay. Tony, anything to add?
So from my perspective, I'll re-emphasize on EcoVadis, like Amy mentioned. I think that the one thing I'll mention on EcoVadis is it's going to be more related to the bigger organization, but you're looking at the supplier base holistically, including how they deal with their sourcing themselves. So you really, that gives you the assurance in throughout their supply chain, as far as the Far East and so on, if it goes, how they're dealing with labor, proper sourcing, ethical sourcing. So I would say EcoVadis. Now, in absence of that, if you're dealing, let's say, with a small, medium-sized player within the UK or nearby in Europe, if it's important enough, I'm stating the obvious, an audit a year or two and taking, you know, some basic notes and corrective actions without making it too complicated. So I think COVID allowing, I think doing some audits would not harm if that's feasible, especially for a strategic supplier, I would say. And then similar thing to what Vicky mentioned is what their disclosure is in terms of their reporting on the website, some corporate social responsibility, whatever they call it, doesn't need to be fancy like this. Now, the last point that comes to mind, which I think is going to be down the road, whether in the UK or within the European Union, I think medium to large size companies are going to be required, in addition to their financial disclosure, to have disclosure around their environmental, social, and governance. This is not by regulated yet, but that's in scope in the UK and Europe. Again, that's not going to apply to, I think, an organization that is probably less than 500 people or 250, but keep this in mind. This is going to raise the bar in terms of disclosure in addition to financial disclosure. So I'll stop there if that makes sense. So,
but just a point to follow on, Tony, proving recycled content and Recce class. Would you like to mention that?
Yeah, so if we look, this is a good point, Lorcan, and that's now, we're living this now currently in the UK, and that's the part of avoiding greenwashing. I think most of you who use plastic packaging, to avoid the plastic tax, you have to have assurance and compliance that your supplier is putting 30% recycled content. And I think there's two ways to do it. The best way to do it is that Lorcan mentioned, is to have external accreditation from an organization like Recyclass, ISCC Plus. There are plenty out there that are accredited to do that. And that gives you the most peace of mind that they're following the rules and have proper way of sourcing and running their operation. There could be other ways to do it, to have properly legally bounding letters in terms of product specs and so on. So, but definitely this is what we're doing in the operation where Lorcan and I sit at Heener, for example. The waste and refuse sacks that we make, a big part of them are accredited by Recyclass, and actually the customer gets a certification that you have actually 80% proper recycled content in, and we get audited every year and so on. So this is just an example of how you can go about a supplier and get the assurance you need that it's sustainable. Does that make sense, Lorcan, from your question? Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. Renee?
Yeah, I think to add on what Tony says, this new legislation is called the CSRD, and it will come into effect as of the book year 2023, and it's for all companies bigger than 250 people. So yeah, again, mid-size, but you can just see that in a few years' time, it will also drill down to the group below. About this topic, I think a lot has been said about the third-party certifications. I think we're also all aligned that don't just look at a single product claim, look at the company that actually makes the product and look at their credentials and what they say about sustainability. And I think also these, 4 tick boxes in the life cycle, and does the product tick only 1 box or 2 or 3 or 4, or does a company tick 1, 2 or 3, 4 boxes? It gives you a little bit of a perspective where they're going. And last but not least, we will need to go to net zero emissions. So please, check with companies that they already have a plan to be net zero, and report on that as well, because that will help you as well, because your emissions come also from what you buy. So we need to work together on that, as already stated this morning.
Okay, thank you. The next question, starting with you this time, Renee. It follows on from someone's recent visit to Interclean, where lots of exhibitors promoted themselves as sustainable. And it was one of the questions that was posed to Joe as well. But what does sustainable mean? Can we, as a diverse and complex industry, agree on a simple and all-encompassing definition which can be satisfactory and understandable to all stakeholders? Sounds like Nirvana.
If only, I would say. No, I second that. And I think there's a lot of questions around that for today, and a lot of questions we also get. Sustainability seems to be the new buzzword. It's like hygiene, you can put a lot of things under hygiene. The same goes for sustainability. I would say, what does sustainability mean to you? And more importantly, to your customers? And you can use the 3 Ps, the people, the planet, the profit. You will find definitions of those on internet, so they will help you, what does fall underneath. But again, what does it mean for you? How does it add value for your business? So look at things like, if you look at products, is it waste? Is it recycling? So I think you will find a lot that helps you there, and then just, focus on the things that are closest to your business. That's where you can make the quickest changes, but also with the biggest impact. So stay close to your own core business and really work as of now, if you haven't already done that, to identify what's important for your customers, and then create your own sustainability priorities from that. But there's a lot of greenwashing. As said, just look, the 7 sins of greenwashing. This will help you as well.
Thank you. Amy, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo everything that Renee said. I was at Interclean, and yeah, I mean, some of the things I can be skeptical. We all can. We all like to tell a good story. I think, yeah, it's really important to, again, look at the certifications. If people are claiming things, where's the evidence to back up the claim? Just really be aware when you're looking at what people say. Does it sound like it's too good to be true? Dig into the detail a little bit, but yeah, if you're looking at smaller organizations, as Renee said again, you know, if it's what you're looking for and it's what your customers want, then yeah, then it's important, isn't it?
Thank you. Vicky, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just echoing those sentiments. Look for what's important to you. Quite often, look for the evidence, and if it is too good to be true, quite often it is. You know, look for evidence to back up claims, where they're being made. Be aware of what is going on in the markets, and the 7 Sins of Greenwashing, fantastic resource. And just the 3 Ps. To have a business, you want to be profitable. You need to be profitable. Otherwise, you're not going to have a business. But you don't want that to the expense of people, be that internally or externally, and where we are, the planet, you know. So you're looking at pollution control and things like that. And that to me sums up sustainability. That's what I focus on when I'm looking at setting our plans in motion.
Thank you. Tony?
Actually, Vicky phrased it properly. I'll make it as philosophical as this. I think there was an academic in Cambridge that put the perspective that actually the economy has to be a subsidiary of the environment rather than the opposite. So, and then profit would come rather than be the primary generator. So I don't have a simple answer on sustainability. What is clearly emerging that it's going to be a way of the next business model, and then everything that the panel discussed fits into that perspective. So.
Okay, thank you. The next question then, can you offer any suggestions for how to respond when a customer requests what we have in place for sustainability planning? And this one will be starting with you, Tony.
Yeah, I think it has some resemblance to what we just discussed, correct? I mean, if you mean if a customer of ours comes to you and
that's the implication, yeah.
Yeah.
Evidence
I think we go back to, it does need to be fancy depending on how small or big you are, depending on you play a part in the value chain. So I think the easiest to explain is what you're doing on the product side. Next, because you can prove that. The next thing I would say in terms of the planning, just tell them the framework you have, as basic as it is. And I think CHSA offered that 5 pillar. Maybe you can start to do that. Give some proof point. The product is the easiest probably if you're on a product side. If you're also on the service side, similar things. Product first in terms of your responsibility towards the community, if you're a producer or even a distribution center in terms of your transport. So I would say high level basic strategy of what you're doing and a couple of proof points. I'm not sure if that answers it partially, Kathy.
Yeah. Thank you. Renee, have you got anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think when I look at the sustainability planning, it actually has the double meaning of sustainability. So it's about the planet, but it's also how does can your business survive long term? So how are you preparing your business to survive in this, let's say, new world that we're all looking into? But I second Tony. I think the sustainability directory and the 5 topics are a great way to start. And to be honest, again, Google can be your best friend. Just look up sustainability plan and you will find a lot of examples just to get you going. So I think that will be my biggest tip. Don't start to do everything from scratch. There's a lot of companies out there, also consulting companies that can help you with like a basic plan to start from. So use what's already been done by others. Like the SDG organization in the UK, the SDGs is the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. They have tons of materials you can just grab and work with. So, take it easy on yourself and steal with pride.
Thank you. Amy?
Yes, so again, agreeing with what everyone's saying, I would say, start really simple. If you're starting from nowhere, start really simple. You could create a document based on the pillars by CHSA, as mentioned. The directory is really would be really useful, but also consider what's realistic. You can't do everything. Look at your competitors, as mentioned. Steal with pride. What are they doing? Look at a company that you consider is really sustainable. It might not be even in the same field as you're working in, but look at them. What are they doing? Start making a plan. I bet you're actually doing a lot more than you thought, than you would even consider as sustainable related, particularly around people. But it has an environmental benefit. You know, you could be using concentrated chemicals, therefore less plastic bottles. You know, look at what you're doing. Just keep it really simple and be realistic. Yeah, and don't beat yourself up. Just, you know, do what you can for now.
Thank you. Vicky, anything you want to add to that?
Just add in that, you know, everybody making one small change has a massive impact. So if you're one small change that you can feed then back into your customers and say, you know, we're now recycling all our plastic packaging. That one small change can have a huge impact if everyone is doing it. So just be kind to yourself, look at a small target, set yourself some realistic goals. Things are not going to be achieved overnight. Set yourself some realistic targets and celebrate when you achieve them. But yeah, be kind to yourself and small changes as you go.
Thank you, Vicky. This next question, starting with you, Vicky, and it might be a bit specific for you. So if it feels inappropriate, or not quite in your area, just say. In my experience, about 90% of a modern office building can be cleaned with probiotics and vegetable-based detergents. These products fit well into the concept of a circular economy. Therefore, with the huge recent rise in the price of petrochemical raw materials, does the panel consider that a move towards cleaning with probiotics as opposed to petrochemicals is a good move, not only for our businesses, but also towards a more ethically sustainable future, and may protect the organisation against inflation as well of raw material costs?
So probiotic cleaners probably do have certain areas where they can be used, I would say, but look at the tasks you're trying to complete and what it is you're trying to do. So if it's a disinfectant task that you're trying to complete, you probably need a disinfectant that covers the EN test methods and has the right accreditation for what you are trying to do. I had a look around. I don't think there's many accreditations with the European test methods on probiotic cleaners. I may be wrong on that. But if it's something in particular that you are trying to prove a virucidal disinfectant, or you're trying to disinfect from all the touch surfaces, etc., make sure that you're using the right product for the right job. That is one of my main mantras, is the correct product for the correct job. If you're using a product incorrectly, it can have even more of a detrimental effect than using the correct product at the right dilution rate would have. So that would be make sure that you are using the correct products for the correct tasks. You wouldn't wash your hands in toilet cleaners. So
no, I wouldn't. Thank you. Tony, is there anything you want to add to that?
Not in this area. No, Kathy, sorry. Yeah.
Renee and then Amy, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think I would echo a lot what Vicky is saying. I think the challenge with like newer technologies that are coming up, which is a really good thing. We need these, breakthrough technologies to help us to the future. The downside is often that it takes a long time for them to be accredited. So sometimes customers just want to be safe. So they want to also have the certificate just in case something goes wrong. So in that sense, just make sure that the products can be used for what you want to use it for. And then on the other hand, we need to keep driving governments and legislative authorities to be more critical, yes, but also more flexible in allowing different methods going forward. There's still a lot of regulation that's actually stopping things from being recycled or used. So I think it's a good development, but we always need to make sure it's really 100% the best for the planet. Also looking, again, at where do the ingredients come from? Are they sustainably sourced? So just looking at the product, I would again go back to the company that makes this and look at the company itself and what they're doing to, reduce waste. How's their production method? Because just the product doesn't give you the 360 approach. So I would always do a little bit of a trick there. Don't just look at the product, look what the whole company is doing to, make sure it's a circular approach.
Yeah, and I would just add, it's not really an area I'm familiar with, but it really does sound like a sustainable way to clean. But I guess at the moment, especially with COVID cases rising again, the main issue may be around actually influencing the offices to switch to using these chemicals. There might be nerves around whether they kill bacteria effectively, or how do they handle pathogens. But I really do. I think it sounds like a great way forward. And as we know, sustainability is always changing. So yeah, definitely something to keep an eye out for the future.
Thank you. This next one is starting with you, Amy. It's a slightly longer question. There is lots of focus on recycling being a sustainable alternative for manufacturing of products and packaging. However, using recycled materials leads to higher CO2 outputs in manufacturing than if recycled materials have not been used. What it does do is avoids the material heading to landfill, but it will eventually end up there. What I'd like to know is if the panel are looking to reduce the materials used in manufacturing packaging, which will have a greater positive environmental impact, or if they are looking to use more biodegradable materials in packaging.
Okay, so firstly, I'm going to be a little bit controversial about this question. I kind of read this in between questions, and I've got a little fact that came from Research Now that demonstrated the benefits of recycled plastic. And they say it requires far less energy to manufacture, up to 75% less energy for a bottle made of recycled plastic versus virgin plastic. So I'm not an expert in this area. I would say in terms of if we're talking about packaging and plastic particularly, we would look at, where can we reduce it? That's always the number one, where can we reduce it? And then how can we use recycled plastic? How can we use more recycled plastic? In terms of Kimberly-Clark, we are founding members of the UK Plastic Pact and the US Plastic Pact. So we're committed to having 100% recyclable, reusable or compostable, biodegradable by 2025. I've seen there's lots of, there's a new chemical that's being tested around breaking down plastics. So potentially that could be something for the future that stops it going to landfill completely. But yeah, I definitely agree. If you can use less, that's the ideal scenario.
Okay, thank you. Vicky, anything to add?
I would just echo that where you can reduce your packaging, that is fantastic, but you have to do so safely as well. So you have to make sure that the product is still going to get to the end destination in one piece. But yeah, reduce would be my go-to, reduce where possible and include recycled material where possible.
Okay. Thank you. Tony?
So I think I'll echo both Vicky and Amy, and especially Amy, in the sense that I think there is a misperception on the facts, because this is just science. It's not a commercial pitch. Just think about it this way. Talking about plastic, let's call it polyethylene or polypropylene. Basically, you just take it to basics. You're taking gas or naphtha and you're doing a whole petrochemical step and getting to a virgin material. So think about it this way. If you're able to reuse a plastic that's been put out of the market partially and blend it back with virgin, just the science is going to show you're going to reduce CO2 emission, because you're really comparing back to virgin, which is a whole petrochemical process. So I think whoever asked that question, we can try to address it with the facts, and the science says that, even the academics. And there is a famous professor that now moved to Maastricht, Kim Raggard. So I can send those details. They can look it up. And it also pushes this further to compare some type of plastics versus glass and paper and others to show the whole life cycle analysis around it. So I'll echo that in terms of no recycled plastics will definitely reduce the CO2 emission. I don't want to disclose a lot of confidential things, and maybe Lorcan is aware. Internally, we looked at one of our sites in Bromborough in the UK recently that's been putting a lot of recycled content in for our internal purposes. And we really were able to quantify, how many million miles of driving cars you would reduce that. And we didn't do it for an external sales pitch, we did it for ourselves. So I can confirm the facts that where you need the plastic, try to use the least of it, try to lightweight it, and then maybe a third resort, if you really have to use it, try to use it with recycled content, and that would reduce the carbon footprint. Sorry for the long answer, but that's an important topic to clarify. So,
thank you. Renee, anything to add?
Yeah, maybe two short things, or maybe I'd always like three, but I think a lot about plastics is education and perception. And there's a lot of, I would say, maybe political or YouTube perceptions around plastic. If you look at this whole life cycle analysis, for some products, the carbon footprint is even lower if you use plastic than, for instance, using carton. So I think there are two ways to looking at this. Yes, of course, we want to reduce fossil plastic, but it doesn't mean that plastic is necessarily bad. But I think the recycling, like Tony said, recycling will reduce CO2. So that's always better than using fossil plastic. I think the other thing is this bioplastics, and that's where education comes. If your customers put the bioplastics in the same plastic recycling bin as the fossil plastics, it even becomes more difficult to recycling because you're putting a foreign object into the recycling stream. So that might even complicate the recyclability. So I think that's also something to keep in mind, that bioplastics work if you dispose of them in the right way, but 9 out of 10 customers still see something like plastic and they put it in the plastic container. So I think there's a lot of education and a lot of recycling grades that we can use to improve this recyclability. But of course, less is more. But I also want to state, even though everybody is trying to reduce plastics, it's about making sure the plastic doesn't end up in the landfill or in the water, and that we use less fossil where possible.
There's a quick follow-on question just as part of it that's just come up as well. What about the microplastics being put back into the water system when washing materials that have used recycled plastic bottles, when washing material, in brackets microfiber cloths? Is there anyone who just briefly wants to say anything about that before we go on to the next question? Any takers?
I can try to take an attempt. I'll admit I don't have the facts, the total facts around this. I'll mention a couple of things. One, it is indeed a risk. Two, there is a lot of science that is ongoing now to determine truly the effect of micro or even more complicated nanoplastics on the organism. And I think the data is not all, there's definitely going to be a risk, correct? But I think we don't have enough to make a judgment around it. Now, having said that, I'll take a bit more of a macro perspective. For people like us who actually manufacture plastics, use raw material or recycle, there is a lot of pressure on ourselves that we need to put to make sure that the micro or macro plastics, that we have a decent way to run our operation, to make sure we're not intentionally or unintentionally putting some of those virgin material before being converted back into the gutters and the waste stream. So there is a lot of basic hygiene to be done in how we operate. I think the complicated topic that I think is behind the question is we are drinking, bottled water, let's say, and what's going to be the impact from migration into us. I don't want to make a judgment around this. I think there could be very, very long-term impact. They're not fully understood, as I can tell. However, there's going to be also being legislation I'm more familiar with, and probably Renee is, in continental Europe around microplastics. And the European Commission is really looking at that very closely. And that's going to impact tires. That's going to impact people like us in how we run our plastic conversion units. So I think there's some essential things to be done in terms of diligence in how we run our operation. I'll leave it at that from my perspective, Kathy. So
thank you. Thank you. Renee?
Yeah, there is indeed a commission in the EU, and we're part of that one. And I think it's really important that, again, you know, there's legislation around it, and it touches everybody, you know, from people in the skincare, from people making plastic bottles. I think the biggest thing here will be the technology with the filters used by the bigger companies that make recycling. So again, here, you know, look for the bigger companies. We also have these huge recycling companies, and there's a lot of them starting up now because of the high demand. And I think that will actually be the risk, that a lot of companies start recycling themselves or granulating them. So again, the EU is really looking for new ISO standards to make sure that they're using the appropriate water filtration systems to make sure that doesn't happen. And I expect something soon, but I guess knowing how governments work, end of next year around this as well.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, I'm going to combine a couple of the questions that we've got down here, and this is starting with you, Renee. They're both different versions of the same sort of thing. Customers can be really resistant to change. They want the product they know and trust in the format they know and trust. We have to deliver what they want, so it can feel like our hands are tied. And customers can resist minimum order quantities and still want same-day deliveries. How do we balance this with the need to run vehicles at capacity on all journeys, outbound and inbound?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize this. I think in sustainability, I always say people are on a journey. And I take the journey in 3 steps. It's the basics of sustainability. You know, I want a certificate. I want to know that I'm doing the basic things. Then you go to, sustainability is actually adding value to my business. And then you have the companies that, you know, want to save the planet. I think these kind of customers are in the early stages, but I thoroughly believe that we all have a thought leadership role to play. Like with the plastic tax, it hit a lot of people from one day to the other. They were not prepared. And I think there you as an industry can be a little bit more these thought leaders and actually be kind of consultants to your customers. But being realistic, a product needs to work. You know, if it doesn't work, people don't want to change. And there's a really resistance to change also from COVID. They want to make sure that the product works. So here, what we would recommend a lot is work with, you know, suppliers that have these arguments that you could use for your customers, but that also can offer like trials or can offer training. So it's much easier to step up. And I think also looking at the total cost will make a difference. Don't just look at the product, but if you have less waste, if you have less cleaning to do or less bins to clean, again, that saves cost at another angle. So I think there's a lot to do. It does take a little bit of a thought leadership role or, you know, being a pioneer. But the more proof point you have with customers, you can inspire other customers. So start with one customer and then, you know, use it as a case for another customer. Be creative, but don't be afraid to test things as well.
Thank you. Amy, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Really similar, actually. You know, we're a panel of sustainability experts or champions. Not everyone is where we are. Give proof points to the customer, show them what will it mean. So, you know, if they were to switch to full pallet deliveries once a week, you know, what would that mean in terms of CO2 reduction across the year compared to what they're doing now? How can we look at their products? Trial, like Renee said, is a really good idea. Also case studies, you know, work with your suppliers. They'll have switched other customers over to other products that you want to influence towards. What case studies do they have? Do they talk about the sustainable benefits? Do they talk about cost benefits? You know, I'm sure Mr. Customer who wants next day delivery would be satisfied by a price reduction. You know, if they're using less, they're wasting less. You know, think about all of those things as proof points and evidence that you can give to the customer to try and help influence them. But I'm saying all of this, but I know it's no easy task. Good luck.
Thank you. Vicky, have you got anything you would like to add?
Echoing the same that Amy said, you know, look at the trials out there, you know, give them a bit of product to try first, try and convince them that way with trialing new products with them. you know, really educate them on the benefits. Education, people aren't aware of some of the impacts some of these things can have. So one of the things that I quite often go back to is if you buy a bottle of RTU spray, quite often when you extrapolate that up, one pallet of RTU trigger sprays can be the same as 55 pallets. So you're putting 2 lorry loads out there to cover one pallet of super concentrated material, for example, that you can use through a dosing pump. And quite often you're saving money as well, because their in-use cost of a super concentrated product can be lower than the RTU cost. So see which bit it is that matters to your customers. Is it the ease of use? Is it the cost of use? And find a nice compromise, I suppose, would be the word that you can all agree on.
Thank you. Tony, anything you want to add to that?
I would say not a lot to add, except echo the fact that need to look at the holistic perspective in terms of cost savings, the delivery model, rather than the price of the product only. I'll say from our narrow angle in plastics is where we're putting our innovation in, and sometimes we make recycled product or sustainable products more expensive, is because you're not only trying to overcome the tax, and the tax, I don't want to be doom and gloom. Probably we're going to be taxed more on this down the road. So as you innovate and maybe make more costly products to trial that are sustainable, there's going to be a net potential savings in that, because taxes can be variable. That's one. And two, especially in the UK, over here, it's a slightly different topic. There is going to be extended producer responsibility scheme that's going to be put in place. There is a roadmap. So if plastics are not lightweight enough and non-recyclable, there's going to be heavy penalties into that in terms of further taxation down the road. So I've echoed what the panelists said, and I just added some things in how we're driving our product innovation. So
thank you. This question's first for you, Tony. How can it's not plastics related, but it's your next panelist. How can an SME improve the local community based in the UK in poorer areas with a small team, budget and resources?
Oh, it's a good question. I think it's probably a question to the wider audience. So I think I get it, but so is the question for a small, medium enterprise as being part of the community in probably a poorer area, how they can contribute from a sustainability? Is that the question?
Yeah, and from and the ethical sustainability side of things. So how do they make a difference in the local community?
Well, I mean, probably everybody's invited to answer, I would assume. So I think to me, there's some, I'll mention it without coming across the wrong way. And I live in Belgium. I'm currently in the UK. And I'll be very honest with you personally, that there is a lot to do on litter reduction. And sometimes you can do some, I know it sounds basic, that you can do some initiatives here and there to collect litter, not necessarily to solve the problem, but to raise awareness on littering, because that's really where the issue is, especially when we talk about the issue of ocean plastic. So few things like this. I think it could be the reputation of the company, even if you're a 5-person company, how you deal with your employees, correct? And if you're running a small manufacturing, no matter how small it is, not only, I mean, there is between meeting the legal obligation, let's say in emission or waste, but also going the next step from a moral obligation. So I'll stop there. I don't want to sound like I'm preaching, but there could be very non-costly things to do to be an ethical, sustainable company within our own community. And I'll echo this. There's still some work to be doing in litter and awareness around that, wherever you are, I think, be it in the UK or in the continent. So I'm not sure, Kathy, if that makes sense, but that's
yes, that makes
good.
That makes good sense. Thank you very much. Renee, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think, you can be as creative as you want. Again, maybe stay true to your core. So if your core is about cleaning, why don't you start cleaning a school and do like all 6 or 8 or 10 schools in your area, or clean an elderly home, or do a cleanup activity with that once a year, do National Cleanup Day in your area. And then you can more or less, also claim that and use that on social media. But it also can be really like little things. And Tony mentioned recycling. You may want to offer a container on your premises where people can drop free plastics or drop their old batteries, or the simple things that people tend to just put in the bin And if you just start collecting them or create a collection point for your community, you know, you can be really creative. Just stay true to your core. What's your strength? If it's transport, if it's cleaning, if you have space, or if you have really dedicated employees, and what's the social issues in your area. So anything you do makes the world a better place.
Thank you, Renee. Amy, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, everything that everyone said. This is a great question, and you know, you can have fun with it. You know, you could, as simple as if you had a little bit of grassland that you scattered some wild bee mix to entice bees to the local area, or you know, if you had children come in for work experience, or you know, apprenticeship schemes, or yeah, litter picking, community days. You could partner with a local charity and go in and transform a room, paint a room, decorate a room. You know, anything like that would make a huge difference to people, and it would make you feel good as well, which is always really nice.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy. Vicky, final comment on this one?
Yeah, it's the little things. Litter picks are fantastic and create, you know, massive visibility, especially in the local area. You know, and if you might have a collection of really small businesses together, look at maybe, you know, if you all club together and get a recycling bin, is that going to benefit your community? There's various different things. A bake sale, a charity bake sale. Everyone loves a nice Macmillan cake bake. So you know, just the small things that don't have to cost a lot, but yeah, do make that little bit of an impact and make you happy as well.
Thank you everyone. We're just on time now, so I'm just going to hand back to Lorcan for the final closing comments, if that's okay.
Thanks very much, Kathy. It's been an excellent session, and I've seen some of the posts come in as people have acknowledged that. So the expertise was obviously self-evident from the speakers. The quality that you guys can do is great. So thank you very much for what you've provided with the CHSA. In terms of the wider audience, I hope that the people who are joined find this very useful and practical, and will progress and follow in the journey as they can. Remember, if you'd like a copy of any of the fact sheets, etc., please email Kathy and keep up to date what we're doing with our sustainability. So on that note, thank you indeed very much for the panel and Kathy for organising, and everybody who's joined and watched this space. Thank you very much indeed, and goodbye.